One I was the most frightened to do. The others were just sort of like, whatever. But this one, I just felt too vulnerable. I was like, can I really talk about these experiences? Is it really okay? And somehow I have gotten myself to a place where I can hardly wait to tell you these experiences. So I feel like everything is good. All right, so sacred voices and experiences. Let's see here. Okay. Oh, this is just, this is just saying that we're recording, and we do not have a microphone to pass around, so if you have questions, you may not get picked up anyway. Talk loudly if you want to get picked up. Talk softly if you don't. That's the best I can say. Okay. All right. The way I know to present all of this material to you is just to talk about my own personal faith journey, which is, I think everyone has a unique journey, and mine certainly has been. So, starting with that. And you can read those. I mean, it's just that that's just an overview slide. Okay. Basically, my journey started with being a devout Christian. I started with my family of origin. I'll get to that. Devout Christian, agnosticism, and then where I am today. So that's where we're headed. That's the overview. Okay, now, the first bullet point up there is Amanda, but actually I do want to start with my family of origin because Amanda's age 13. Family of origin, very wonderful, loving family. Would have said they were Christian because they felt like they should, and that was what you had to do to be a good person, and they wanted to be good people. Neither of my parents liked to go to church. The reason they did not, well, one of the reasons, I think is important here. They didn't feel good enough to go to church. They felt like they didn't have the right clothes, they didn't know what to say or do, they didn't know the songs, it was just an intimidating experience, and so we never went. But if anyone had asked them if they were Christian, absolutely, no doubt about it. They also never examined those beliefs though, because that's what they thought they were supposed to do. Okay, so that's how I grew up. Okay, about age 13, my neighbor down the street, my girlfriend down the street, came from a very religious family, and they did go to church every Sunday and were on all the committees and all this kind of stuff. So my friend Mary Ann asked me one day, she said, would you like to start going to church with me? And I said, sure, why not, Well, okay, here's part of why I did that. And even this is sort of quirky. Because I did come from a very, very loving family. I never went through the terrible twos. I wouldn't have wanted to, I loved everybody and I wanted them to love me, and I always did what I was supposed to do. When my friend Mary Ann invited me to attend church, that was the first thing I could figure out to do to begin to individuate, because my family did not, that just wasn't them. So I said, sure. And I started going to church with Mary Ann, and we did everything. Everything there was to do at church, we did it. Now, Amanda, the reason I mentioned that, those of you who have attended or watched any of the other things, I may have mentioned Amanda. She is one of my parts, internal parts. She is 13. She wants to do God's will. Anything, whatever, she wants to do God's will. I can remember being that, and I didn't know there was an Amanda back then. That came many years later, but looking back, I can see this is where she began. I can remember lying in my bed at night and reading my Bible. I wanted to read the Bible start to finish. Not that I remembered it or anything, but I thought that's what a good Christian should do. And I can remember the Daniel in the Lion's Den and all that, and I was going, wow. And I really gave serious thought to, would I go into a lion's den if God or Jesus told me to do it? And at that time, I felt like I would. Now, who knows? That I was not put to the test, and I'm grateful that I was not. But at that time, yeah, I would do even that. I just wanted to do God's will. Okay, so that was age 13. Okay, now, we get to where my journey gets very deviant or different from many people. And I just referred to it as a summer night. I think it was summer, we'll call it that. I was in college, so I'm assuming I was around 19 or 20. I had come home for the summer. I was taking out the trash at my mom's, and I took it out to the street, and I put it in, and I looked up at the stars. Well, normally you think of that as being an inspirational moment, whatever. I looked up at the stars, and my sense was, I don't know if I believe any of that. I really don't know if I believe any of that. And I was stunned. I was stunned because to have gone from someone who would walk into a lion's den to someone saying, I don't know if any of it's true, was just stunning. But I remember standing there and thinking about it and thinking, well, I know God loves me, and I know that how did I think about it? If I'm not supposed to support this, if I'm not supposed to think this, He will forgive me, and so the only thing I know to do is explore. And I thought, I really sincerely hoped it would all just go away and flip back. And the next morning I wanted to wake up and be a Christian again. That did not happen. I woke up the next morning and I still was, I don't know. And I had to learn new words. Was I an atheist? I'd sort of heard that word. And then I learned the word agnostic, and I thought, well, I guess I'm that because I'm saying I don't know. But I didn't even know the right words. Okay, so how do we interpret this? I didn't do any of these three things at the time. It's more like in retrospect, I've thought about how would others view that. And some would say, oh, you were tempted by the devil and you took it. You took the bait and ran with it, But some would say, we'll get to this one more, it was a reverse conversion experience. It was like Saul, Paul, except backwards. And some would say, going back to the Joan of Arc thing, and John and Nedra are both sick today, but they may be watching. Going back to the Joan of Arc thing, maybe it was a temporal lobe seizure, they would say. It was a physical thing, so I don't know. But anyway, okay, so the next part of my journey is what I'll just call the quest, which was from that day until today, and then where I am now. Okay, this is another one we can go through in a hurry. I started off, my first thought was, well, okay, maybe Christianity isn't the right religion. Maybe I need to be in another religion. So I began exploring all sorts of other religions and trying to find one that fit. And I, would study and learn and attend services and do things. And none of them, I didn't seem to belong to any of those either. And I did all that thing. Oh, psychics. I do want to mention that one briefly. Some psychics are the real thing and others are not. I'll just say that up front. I happened to get one who was excellent. I would still be seeing her today, except she got dementia, so was no longer able to function. But she was just brilliant for me. And my professors in graduate school had recommended her. They were all of my professors were sending their clients to this particular woman because she was helping them a lot. And so I went, and the very first thing she said to me is, she said, "Susan, you are psychic." I had no idea. I had never thought to label myself that way, ever. ever. And I still don't label myself that way, although I do see what she means now. But I was like, I am? You know, and so then her name was Hillary Ellers. Some of you may have heard of her. She was quite the thing for a while. I went to her for years, and she always taped her. You don't need that. The part's not important. But what is important is unconsciously, without realizing I was doing it, when I would go to Hillary, she would tell me things. I would present my questions and what I wanted to work on, and she would tell me things, and I would be sitting there thinking, that's right, that's right, that's right, nope, that's right, nope. And I just automatically sifted it through my own psychic abilities or whatever, and so she was great for me with, anyway, it was perfect. And then therapy, probably 80-90% of my spiritual path has been done with psychotherapy. I'm not pushing psychotherapy at all. It just happened to be my path that worked the best for me. I was a psychologist at that point, and so that domain made sense to me. So much of my work was done that, and much of my work, as I mentioned, was with Gary Lenz from here. So there's that. Okay. This almost makes me want to cry. During this time, and by this time I mean post the summer night when the thing happened, until, I haven't had any in quite some time, so I would say until maybe the last 20, 30 years. I had quite a number of experiences of God. I don't know what else to call it. It just was God. I wasn't trying to. I would not have felt worthy. They just happened. And so I was trying to summarize them, and I came up with 3 that are important to talk about, I think, as examples, because I learned something. There's something to learn from each of these 3. The first one, I'll say an unlikely channel. This was back, I used to be a piano teacher before I was a psychologist, and I taught children in my home, you know, traditional piano teacher thing. And for a while, I would see each of my children in private lessons and also in group lessons. And so one day, I had this group of children. We studied music theory and music history and whatever else I thought of to teach. And I had this group of children, 7 or 8 of them. And this one little boy named Billy was giving me fits. He just would not, I guess he had ADHD, I don't know what he had, but he would not sit still, he would not pay attention, he was up running around, and I am not good with disciplining children. I don't know how to do that, I don't do it well, whatever. And so I was trying my very inefficient methods of trying to, you know, corral this poor little kid so we could have a lesson. And all of a sudden, there was God, just right. I mean, I looked at him and there was God. And I was like, oh my. And I was stunned. I don't believe I skipped a beat. I've wondered what happens, what do people observe when that happens? I don't think you would observe anything, but I don't know that, so I don't know. But anyway, the second one is what I'm calling an unknowing channel, because these are the things I think we need to know. In other words, the first one, the lesson there is even the people that you think are not really particularly godly or not acting godly at that moment, they're God too. You know, that's what I took from that. So the second one is an unknowing channel, and this is a flip experience. When I came to Georgia State, some of you may have known, she's died now, Ermelie Shepherd at Georgia State. She was a beloved member of the psychology faculty, and extremely spiritual, extremely. And when I came to Georgia State as a graduate student, I started having God experiences very frequently. Anytime I would see Irma, she would look at me and I was like, oh, I just wanted to melt. It was just right there, you know. And I thought, I mean, she was we all bowed down to her. She was just one of those kind of people that you just, you know. And so I thought, oh, Irma's doing that. She's sending me something. She's doing that. And one day I made an appointment with her, and scared to death, but I met with her because I wanted to learn more about this and why was she doing it and what did it mean and all like that. So I made an individual appointment with her. She had no idea that that had been happening. None at all. She did not know. Now what she did tell me is, she said, Susan, she said, I have always felt like that there is this presence that is always with me that is right here. And she said, I don't know how to tell you any more about it, but I've always felt that presence. And she said, my guess would be that you're picking up on that. And I was like, oh my goodness. And so I was stunned. And later on, she had a big retirement party because she was so beloved. It was held in one of the upper floors of a general classroom building, huge room. It was filled to the gills, and she had us all seated cross-legged on the floor, and it was a big ritual thing. She did all these kind of things. And at the end, she was in the center, and we were invited to come up and share our personal stories with her. And so one by one, people would go up and they would all talk. Well, I went up and I whispered, and what I whispered to her was, Irma, do you remember that time I came to you and you told me that I said, it just dawned on me, I was giving you credit for that, and I was doing it. And she just started laughing and laughing, and I started laughing, and all the other people that were there said, what? We want to know. And I was not in a place to share that at that time. So you are the first to know what I shared with Irma Lee Shepherd on that day. So, but anyway, so that's the lesson there. If you, whatever you perceive, that's you doing that. You know, God may or may not have a part in it. I'm sure, I guess he does, but not the other person. Okay, the third one. This one brings tears to my eyes too. I interned at the Georgia State Counseling Center, which was how I originally met Gary Lenz. And as part of my internship, I co-led a group, I believe it was for gay men, as I recall. And so we were doing a group, and I don't remember anything about that particular group. I believe I remember the man I looked at where I had that God experience. But what's important with this experience, and I do believe that I just kept right on going, leading the group. I don't know that anyone would have noticed anything. But after that experience, and the words, enduring God's loving gaze. Some of you may remember Heidi Tauscher that came here a few weeks ago and talked to us about the Palestinian-Israeli culture. She and I were emailing, and she used that term, and I said, oh, may I use that? And she said, of course. And because I remember after that group was over, the counseling center, this was in the basement of the old counseling center, and there were, we don't really have anything like this in here. Well, maybe. Well, no, it doesn't go in. There was there was a spot in the basement where there was a big support beam that was there, but for some reason it didn't go on all sides. It was freestanding. I went and put myself between that thing and the wall to have concrete on all sides of me, because I literally felt like I had just shattered into a million pieces. and I needed to get myself contained again. And I remember that so clearly. So, okay, so let's go ahead. Those are the three things there. There's not too much I need to say about spirit guides, except that we're moving now into, after all of this, when I did get in therapy with Gary, and a lot of what we uncovered, we did uncover quite a few, for lack of a better name, spirit guides. Now, what I never learned, and maybe it really doesn't even matter, I don't know how many, if any of those, are actual spirits that are assigned to me to help me or that whatever, and how many of them may be other parts of me. I never could tell the difference, and you know, I still, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it really doesn't matter. Yeah. Now I did find a part, and she didn't have none of my parts. My parts almost never come with names. So the names that I refer to them by, Gary named Susanna. The difference between Susanna and me, and I discovered her almost by accident because she comes in and I can't tell that she's here. I don't know, except Susan is neurotic. Okay? I've got all sorts of stuff that I still just, you know, I'm a normal, neurotic kind of person. Susanna cuts through all that crap, and she just has the wise parts without the neurosis. So the way I learned about her was I would write letters to Gary between our sessions, copious letters to Gary. And I noticed that at times I would be talking typical neurotic kind of talk, like you might tell your therapist. At other times I would be saying, and here's what I know, and it's like this, and it's like that, and it's like, and I wasn't aware of the shift until all of a sudden I thought, whoa, that person seems very wise. And so I mentioned it to Gary, and he was aware of that also. And so when we needed a name to refer to her, and so I told her, well, she's like me. I can't tell the difference except unless I notice that the neurosis is not there. And so he said, well, let's name her Susanna because it's like Susan. I said, okay. So that became her name. So let's go ahead. Okay. The only reason I put this slide up there is because I need to talk about co-consciousness. And so to do that, I just made a little table of what I call degrees of dissociation. But the one that is important for what we're talking about here is the last one, which has to do with co-consciousness. Co-consciousness basically is when one or more parts is aware of one or more other parts. It's like right now I know each of you is here in this room, and so I'm not really co-conscious with you because I can see each one of you, but I don't know what you're thinking or feeling or what you're thinking. I don't know that. When you're co-conscious with your parts inside, you typically do. It's like if I have a part that actually comes into my being, I get it instantly, who they are, what they're thinking, what they know, what they don't know. I just get it. So that's what co-consciousness is. Now, why do we need to discuss that? Oh, yeah, this one. Okay, this was one therapy session. Okay. And here, this is a perfect example of the difference between my neurotic self and who knows whatever. I don't even know. One day, and this was after Gary and I had been working together for 3 or 4 or 5 years, and neither one of us had picked up on this. And I would go in, and often I would talk to Gary about my faith journey and struggles, and about my agnosticism, or was I an atheist, or was I a Hindu, or was I a Buddhist, or what was I, you know? And he was a great person to talk to because, you know, he had his own faith journey. So one day I went in and I said, Gary, has it ever occurred to you that some days I come in here and I talk to you about being an agnostic or an atheist and all of my disbelief, and other days I come in here and tell you I've had another God experience? And we both sort of looked at each other and said, neither one of us had ever thought about that. That's a perfect example of co-consciousness, because the part of me that had the God experiences and knew without a doubt was different from the other parts of me, and they were not co-conscious. So when that part was locked, when either of those kind of parts was locked in, that was their entire reality. And they obviously told it so convincingly that neither Gary nor I, both trained therapists at this point, had even picked up on the fact that those two don't go together. You know, they're not really in the same person. So that was a fun story. And it made a difference, I think. Okay, so going back to the long ago summer night, after all of this, we're getting into where I am now. What do I think it was? I strongly believe it was this one. I think for whatever reason, God or whomever needed me to disbelieve, needed me to take this journey, and knew that the kind of Christian I was pre that summer night, which would have walked into the lion's den and never questioned. I think God had the wisdom to know that I was not going to ever live it up to anywhere near my potential if I stayed in that mindset. So I really think God said, we need a reverse conversion here. And that's what happened. So, okay, I think I'm just going to read this. Not that it's all that great, but it does explain it. I'm centered on the conviction that the ultimate importance lies in each person knowing and being their own true self. Each of us represents a unique piece of a vast, unknowable cosmic truth. It stands to reason that everything will function more smoothly when we all strive to be our best selves. Don't worry about what others are or aren't doing, believing, being. They may be fulfilling their own essential roles in this great cosmic soup. Just be your best you. Okay, what that means, there are a lot of lovely, lovely implications that have come from that. The first thing for me is I really, truly, to my core, do not believe any one race, religion, creed, anything else, that person is better than anyone else. I really don't. I think we're all equally valued and essential in where we are. The second one, it gives me a little more peace with those whom I feel are acting atrociously and or dangerously wrongly. And since I'm only talking about my beliefs here and I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything, I will say that the person I had in mind when I wrote that is Donald Trump. Now, I struggled with, I just couldn't stand this man who, I just couldn't stand it. And finally, the help I received with this one day, I had one of my voices, and this would not have been me. I do think this was some kind of heavenly voice, said, Susan, God sees Trump the way you see Dennis the Menace. And I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And so it gave me some peace with it, because what that means to me is, it's like even Donald Trump, even though I can't say this myself really, he's doing his piece. He's doing whatever he needs to do. Somehow or other, it's all part of the soup that's being generated now. So, that helped. Okay, the other thing that I got from this, there's always more to learn, always more room to grow, and I love both of those things so much, and so the fact that I have an open-ended quest is just perfect for me. Gives me a little more ability to feel safe and have trust and safety in the world. And this has become very important to me as I am aging, because I live alone, and I've had a lot of friends talk to me and tell me that, I really should be thinking about finding what do they call CCR, communities, one of the retirement things, whatever, so that I'll have people to take care of me or whatever. And I looked and I looked and I thought and I tried to imagine moving, and I love my house. Those of you that are on Facebook with me, you know how much I love my gardens and my bluebirds and my hummingbirds and my flowers and my cats, and it was just killing my soul to think about moving. But I went to some places and I visited, and then finally I got a thing from ARC one day, and it said, the new trend is aging in place. And I'm like, aging in place, yes, that's what I want to do, that's what I want to do. Well, it has taken some faith, because something could happen to me when it could happen, but it just feels so right for me for right now. And so right now I am aging in place, and I think it's partly due to this kind of thing that allows me to do that. So I think that's probably it. Let's see what's next. Yes. Last but not least, my new philosophy that's happened as a result of this quest, I am very much a joyful person most of the time these days. I used to be a horribly depressed and silent person, so that's a pretty big transformation. Now, the last slide, I couldn't resist. It's my favorite first slide. Fill your shoes, but don't frill them. Be who you are. Don't elaborate who you are or exaggerate who you are. Just be who you are solidly. So, okay, I am done. I want to hear from you guys. Again, speak loudly if you want to be recorded. Speak softly if you do not. That's the best advice I can give.
It brings me to tears that's exactly the way it is.
Yeah. Okay. So we're on the same. Yes. We're on the same page. I thought we might be. Yeah.
I didn't hear what you said.
I said it's exactly the way it is, because it brings me to tears to have that recognition.
Yeah. Anyone else? Kay?
Yes, I'm sitting here and remembering my imaginary friends. All kids, or lots of kids have them.
Yes.
And you can say, it's part of normal development and all that. But a part of it could be the source of what is in me.
Could be.
And it sounds a little woo-woo, but the human mind is so complicated that we're not going to know. I mean, I think there are hundreds of things that could be known, but so it's an interesting kind of thing.
Yeah. In case that didn't get recorded, Kay alluded to the concept of imaginary friends, and could that be coming from parts inside? I had not thought of that, so I'm glad you said that, but yes, I think so. I think so. I mean, I feel very lucky that I was allowed to know that I had parts and get to know them intimately, and all that kind of thing. I feel lucky, because I know not everyone can or whatever. I believe you have them, and they may have come through as imaginary friends. So who knows? Yeah, that's a good point. Anyone else?
When you talk about the possibility of guides, I like to think of a organizational chart for a company. You've got level workers at the bottom, managers, super managers, work your way up. An example of that for me was a client of mine years ago who called me one day and she said, I just woke up from a nap and there's 24 people in my room. What's going on? And I knew she wasn't crazy. She did have parts. And I said, well, does one of the people look like a spokesperson? She paused and went, yes. I said, so, ask. So she did, silently. And a few seconds later she said, he says they wanted to make sure there were enough of them to go around. Now what fits for her is that growing up in the family she grew up in, she was never allowed to have anything that was just hers, including her first paycheck. Her mom took the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
So the idea of there being something just for her was an unknown at that point. And the way that I think she and I both interpreted her experience was that she had multiple parts of herself, different ages, each with different overlapping functions. And this way, each one of them had their own support person. Now that would be wacky enough, but following that, anytime she had a stressful experience, watched a movie that triggered something or what have you, and got all freaked out, sometimes she would call me and I'd say, have you asked them for help? And she would go, no. And I would go, well. She would say, okay. And one time when she did that, I looked at my watch, and 30 seconds later, maybe 40 seconds later, her voice tone was, I'm fine.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And she was.
Yeah.
So I like that notion that the more stuff we're dealing with, the more guides we have. Elementary school, you got one teacher. Junior high, you got half a dozen teachers. Because there's more stuff, more specialty. I think we all have it.
Oh, I do too.
And they're very polite. Most of the time it seems they wait to be asked for help. Ask for their help.
That's true, unless they name a cat for you. Yeah. Paul's comment was about working with a client who had parts, and him asking, well, was one of them a spokesperson? And the answer was yes, and so then she asked for help, and the spokesperson was able to help. And I have also learned that, and that's one of the benefits. It's like, and I forget also, last week I suddenly got depressed, and I'm like, oh man, where did this come from? What's this? And it took me a while. You don't always think to ask for help, but I did, and it's like you said, the answer was forthcoming pretty quickly. And once I knew what I was depressed about, I was like, oh, okay. And at that point, the cognitive therapy stuff can help. But before that, it can't. If you don't know what's going on, you know, cognitive therapy is just like out the window. So, yes?
Question. This might be totally a different topic, but I've had dreams that some of the characters in the dreams I never thought of as spirit guides, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
But when I hear y'all talking like that, I'm thinking that maybe that's what that was. But I've also, I don't know, I had this one dream that I was walking in this road in my hometown, and I met this guy from high school who was very overweight, and he was kind of obnoxious. And I said, this is where Mary Dean got killed. She was a friend of mine that was in the way. He said, she's not dead. He said, she lives over there. And so I went over there, and it was this unbelievable experience. There was this house. Anyway, it just went on and on like that with
Wow.
these different people. And at the end, it was like someone up on a platform. I was in a backyard, and there were people standing in front of her, and she blew out this violet pink smoke. And I was like, should I breathe in? I don't know, it's the most, but is that kind
Yes.
of in the same domain?
Yes, very much. And I hope you breathed in.
But there was more, I mean, I was so thankful I had that.
Exactly.
That dream.
Exactly.
You know, there were about clothes in it. There were these white garments that this woman, I went to this little house, and it was this beautiful golden brown wood. And this woman was sewing on a sewing machine, making this beautiful. Anyway, it just.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
your God experience.
Yes, yes, yes. Becky's comment was about dreams, and can spirits and dead people and whatever come to us in dreams? Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, a lot of my what I do with my lucid dreaming, and how I've explained that I can now make that last 5 or so minutes before I fall asleep, and I can interact and change things. I watch for the image it gives me, and like, if it gives me an image of a clogged garbage disposal, I'll look for a reset button and see if I can't find a way to reset it. And at this point, usually I can, and then everything will start flowing, and I'm better. And that's the kind of thing that I use my dreams for, or lucid dreams. You can't do that with a regular dream, but with a lucid dream you can. And look, that's why I said I hope you breathed in the vibe, because definitely that was your spirit gift, I think. So, anyone else? Barry's going to cut us off in a few minutes, but we have just a couple of minutes if anyone wants anything or has anything else. Okay?
Everybody in this room, I'm sure you